Probably we are expecting some more guests to come in, but we can start, I guess, because of the time strain. On behalf of the representative of the host nation, Bangladesh, I would like to welcome all of you to this session, to the city of Dhaka, capital of Bangladesh. And actually, November is a very good time to visit Bangladesh. The weather starts getting a little chiller and is very convenient as well. But the burning question is how long it will remain pleasant. I mean, when we were in schools, we used to read in the books that we have 6 seasons in Bangladesh. But now we hardly see 3 of them. It's mostly summer and monsoon. And all these are, you all know what's causing this, the climate change. Today, if we turn on the TV, we'll see that New Delhi is facing the worst ever air pollution in the history. The wildfire is happening in the US, California. So all these are what we are living in today. But the worst part is what we are exposed to. The city that we are sitting in right now is sinking at the rate of close to 2 centimeters every year. So this is probably the best time and the right time to discuss what we can do, what we are doing, what the world as a whole can do to stop this disaster. And to discuss few of the perspective from the regulator side, we have a wonderful esteemed speakers as well as panels with us today. I'd like to introduce you to them. We have Mr. Mohammad Mohsin, who is the Additional Secretary, Ministry of Disaster Management and Relief, Government of Bangladesh. His responsibility is to prepare, plan, and formulate policy in mitigating disaster risk and to coordinate with concerned stakeholders, development partners in the process of achieving government's disaster management role. As National Program Coordinator of National Resilience Program, he is responsible for enhancing resilience to disasters. He has been playing active role in policy reforms such as formulation of National Plan for Disaster Management 2016-2020 and revising standing orders on disaster 2019. Along with him, we have Augusto Hidalgo from Wills Towers Watson. He heads their capital science and policy practice in Southeast Asia. As ex-CEO of an emerging market national reinsurer, Hidalgo worked with UN agencies such as the UN Environment Programme and Development, banks like World Bank ADB on risk management, and transfer solutions for climate and disaster risk adaptation, especially for climate vulnerable developing nations. We also have with us Mr. Karl Hiralal. Mr. Karl has more than 30 years experience in financial regulations and supervision, both in Canada and Caribbean. At the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions, Canada, his responsibilities extended to deposit-taking institutions, insurance companies, credit unions, and pension plans. Mr. Karl.
Mr. Moderator already mentioned that I am working with the government. Actually, I am working with the government for the last 30 years, from village or the grassroots level to the policy making level. So maybe my idea or my views, maybe it will be a little bit different from you. Before going my presentation in details, just for a couple of seconds, you see this is the photos we are handling every year, at least 3-4 months. Then it will be very easy for you to understand that what type of disaster, what type of situation we are handling almost every year, not once, 3-4 times in a year. So anyway, this is the situation, but I'm very happy to hear from the first presenter. I think the first presenter, she mentioned about the global disaster, the country's position. In this regard, if you see this slide, we are in the 7th position. Bangladesh is in 7th position, and this is the affected country among the world last 20 years from 1998 to 2017. And then this is one very good success of our country, because I showed you the photos, like very difficult photos, but you see in 1970, just one day, 13th of November, this month, 13th of November, there was a cyclone, southern part of our country. More than 1 million people died actually. You see, after 45 years, more than 45 years, around 50 years, nowadays, the same type of cyclone, only 4 or 5%. It means from 7 digit to 1 digit. This is a very good success. And this is another, because I intentionally want to show this slide. We are recognized from all over the world that we are the master, we are the teacher regarding managing the disaster. So Ban Ki-moon on the last 10 July of this year, he mentioned. So this is a very significant comments for us. Even then, it's a lot to do, especially the issues you are handling, you are mentioning, you are going to arrange for these 3 or 4 days. This is a very vital issue. So without further delay, I want to mention there are some issues related this today's morning session, that Bangladesh initiative related to inclusive insurance for climate and the disaster risks. This is very vital issue for us. In this slide, the at a glance of Bangladesh initiative related to the inclusive insurance for the climate and disaster risks. And a lot of stakeholders are working in this sector and trying to introduce index-based insurance for farmers with the government. If you see with the government, ADB, Asian Development Bank, working. And then World Bank, JICA, also the government also for the reliability of the weather, especially the weather focused and the early warning, they are working on that. Because early warning very important regarding the insurance, especially the disaster, in case of the disaster. And index-based flood insurance for the farmers, Swiss Re and the Oxfam, and Pragati insurance. But I mentioned this is very limited. It's very limited, we can say piloting even. And another case I want to mention, the weather index insurance for the farmers, also IFC, and then Green Delta. I think the additional managing director is here. Maybe you can hear from a little bit. But I can say, the country we're living is 180 million people. And the area is very tiny, very little. So you have to take this in your consideration. And another very vital issue, the size of the land, owner of the land. If you go to the village, very small land, especially the landowners nowadays. So this is the issue. We should consider all these things. This data is very clear to us that compared to any other country in this region, the insurance penetration is very low compared to Thailand, Malaysia, China, Indonesia, Vietnam, Indonesia, and Philippines. And this is the time to analyze this issue. Why this is low? How can we improve? How can we increase the rate? And why it is not increased by this time? What is the opinion from the government part, as well as from the private sector, as well as from the insurance sector? The challenges. If we analyze the challenges, I think, then we'll understand why. That was the previous slide, the Bangladesh position is low. I briefly summarize challenges of inclusive insurance for climate and disaster risks. First one is people perception. I think some of our friends already mentioned these issues, that it is very important, the people perception. Though government of Bangladesh is promoting to enhance insurance sector and trying a lot, but people may not fully ready to accept still, and there are some bottlenecks. What are the bottlenecks? That is, I mentioned already, the problem of the climate change in our country. If it is, you cannot think about that. Even the last month, lot of rain, So it is not the normal scenario of our country, but it happens, sometimes. So that is why. And another issue is here very much important, that all the insurance companies, how they are very much concerned with the marginal farmers, especially the crop sectors, and the cyclone areas. Our 19 districts of the southern part of our country, almost one-fourth of our country is the cyclone-prone areas, So the low-cost housing is very important. So how the company will go there, insurance company, and how they will take it, whether they know about the insurance or this benefit, this is also the issue. And the second point is the data, accuracy of the data is very important, whether we have the data or not. Even the government, whether we have the data or not, even the company, the insurance-related company, they have the data or not, that is also important. And very much relevant issues is there, forecasting. And then if I mention the third point is reinsurance system. As projected, the effects of the climate change will be more severe in the future. We know that. And then, COP25 is going to be held on 1st of December I call is not Barcelona, is another city in Madrid, yes. I am also going to attend. Anyway, so if you see the third point, that maybe difficulties in pricing risk, reinsurance system with other major international insurers have not still established in the country. So this is the time to analyze, to go through, and to try to develop this process. And the fourth point, complying the building code, especially regarding the earthquake. Bangladesh is very much prone, is vulnerable to the earthquake. Even then, this is complying to the building code in the city. If you go to even the rural, what we are doing for that very rural low-cost housing. And then and what to do. By this time I mentioned there are some points, but again I want to recall the infrastructure inventory is very important, the data disaster record in our country. And robust risk calculation is very important, and comprehensive information and piloting. And enhancing technical capacity, as well as sustainable financing mechanism, and finally the monitoring mechanism. And government is very much sincere, all these issues, but it needs the holistic approach from the government, from the private sector, from the community. I want to mention that is very important. Whether government only the private sector, no. Community is very much a part and parcel of this issue. And with these few slides, I want to conclude my presentation. Maybe in the question and answer we can share. Thank you very much, and thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Mohammad Mohsin, for delivering your presentation. It was very short, precise, and focused. You have rightly pointed out the challenges that Bangladesh has been facing, but the points to be noted that despite all these challenges, Bangladesh has been the frontier in managing all this disaster and rehabilitation thing, and credit goes to the government as well as the ministry in which Mr. Mohammad Mohsin is the additional secretary. And this has all been possible because of a concentrated effort from the whole quarters of the life, as well as a lot of public-private partnership are being initiated in addressing those issues. And as rightly pointed out, insurance is a way forward, but there are challenges. One of the challenges has been perception. This is a global phenomenon, I guess. Wherever in the developing nation, insurance needs to be looked at a very least important subject in the day-to-day life. So once that perception is addressed properly, I believe the safety net can be put in place in a very easy manner. But apart from what I would like to focus on Mr. Mohsin's presentation is, he has mentioned that apart from subsidy, there are a few other ways the government can help in building the ecosystem. One of the ways is definitely putting up a lot of infrastructures for data. You see, without data, you cannot put up a comprehensive insurance system in place. And in today's world, when we are talking about more like index-based products, data is the key. Monitoring of those data are even more important in terms of settling claim and following up. So with that note, I'd like to open up the floor if anybody has any question on the presentation, anything? Anyone? Oh, yes, Augusto, please.
Yeah, Mr. Wilson, thanks very much for that. So I come from a pricing background from a reinsurance company, and we have a tendency when pricing a product to, in a way, penalize lack of data quality. And but you've had quite a good experience in 2014 with the index-based insurance pilot, if I'm not mistaken. And I wonder how better quality data or knowledge about the building codes that you mentioned played into the acceptance from the communities that adopted the index-based insurance, and just generally how, data quality figures in the DRM conversations here.
Thank you very much. Actually, if you see the scenario of our country, if you compare with the previous 10 years, very much different. It's booming, economy is booming, urbanization is booming, If you go to even the sub-district level, you see a lot of buildings and a lot of developments. So, but still we are facing some problem with the maintaining the building code, regarding the infrastructure. So government is very sincere, and hopefully within a couple of months we'll get the new building code. And issue is here, the rural infrastructure, the rural body is responsible to issue the NOC, such as sub-district level or even the union level. Union is the very unit. But the capital level, there are some very big organizations, such as Rajok, they are authorized to give the permission regarding the building and the others. And the data, we are trying to get the data because we are very serious regarding the earthquake. That is why government, our ministry is working on that with the Ministry of Works to get the data. This is the one side data. But if I mention regarding the agricultural product, agricultural product in that side, that is very vital issue. But problem is, whatever I have mentioned, the few words that to get the data actually, especially in the agricultural field and the land situation and even the early warning system is not yet up to the mark. That is why I think this is one of the bottlenecks for the insurance companies to go up to that level. Even then, the community's perception also is not clear that such as in case of the building in the rural infrastructure, the people don't know that this is the village. I have a house with a very low-cost house. Whether insurance company will come or not, this is the system. So, but I think within couple of years, because the insurance companies, the association, very sincere. Today, Honorable Prime Minister is going to attend the tomorrow, I think. Yeah, tomorrow going to attend this integration session. So this will be a milestone. This will be a milestone for us. Then people will understand, all the media, all the concerned government bodies will understand this is the government top priority. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, sure, Mr. Kerala.
Well, thank you for that. The chart that you brought up with the insurance penetration quite clearly shows that Bangladesh is at the lower end in terms of the penetration gap. And this whole conference here this week is about insurance playing a part in mitigating disaster risks as a result of climate change. The question that I have in my mind is, if the penetration gap is so low in the country, how did you manage to break the trust or to improve the trust among your citizens in the country and get them to accept your microinsurance product, which seems to be a success for the country? And so what can you share with the audience as to how you got that going in the context where your penetration is so low?
Thank you very much. We are very much hopeful, in Bangladesh. If any issue, government and the people, they take very seriously, it will not take very long time. Such as, the mobile phone. You'll be happy to know that within couple of years in our country, now we have, we have the 180 million people. We have more than 200 million mobile within couple of years. So with this, I want to mention that if you see car insurance system in our country, this is mandatory. And everybody is, already accepted this one, the car insurance, very much. If you see from yesterday, 1st of November, government issues one new regulation regarding the road safety. I think you have seen in the newspaper. Very much strict on that. And nobody even think that without the insurance system, anybody can, issue a license with the car. So I'm sure that this is the time to discuss regarding this issue from all sectors. So before private sectors had participated, the work for the poverty reduction and the protection and vulnerable people, lot of NGOs should be involved, development partner, and all sectors from the government is need to involve. And it's, I think, only the way we can penetrate, that is the holistic approach. This is very important. Not only the insurance company, not only the government, not only the community. So you see, in case of disaster, we are the role model in the world. I've shown there are some photos, but we are successful. So this system, this insurance system, I'm very much hopeful that will be successful, but it needs a lot of penetration. What is the way? The approach. Approach should be the holistic approach. Not the government approach, not the community approach. It should be the approach from all sectors. Then it will be easier for us to penetrate and to gain all these issues. Thank you.
So when it comes to the data, it's always, the question goes back to the quality of the data. And when we wanted to design any product for the weather index-based insurance, we have a lot of interactions with the reinsurers as well. Since there is a question on the quality of data, the pricing goes up. And it's more like, how do we address that? And for doing that, many successful models are around in the world. We are trying to follow that, but then again, it's too early to predict because a lot of weight are being given on the historical data, which is the local source. So, yes, you're right. We need to go till further before we can say that the data that we have been using is a quality data, and based on that, we can do an accurate pricing. And to supplement Mr. Hiralal is, see, on the penetration side, it has become a chicken and egg situation. How to increase the penetration when there is a big perception gap. So these are the things we'll be addressing probably next 2 days, 2-3 days, and in this session as well, that how Bangladesh is moving forward, how Bangladesh is addressing these missing dots in the ecosystem. So hopefully by end of this 3 days event, you'll get a little bit of clear picture on how Bangladesh is moving up on the scales. At this moment, I've got a question from the audience, which I would like to address at the end of the session, if it is okay. Now we'd like to introduce another esteemed member in our panel who has just joined. He is Mr. Luke. Mr. Luke has more than 18 years of experience as finance professional with senior positions in banking and insurance. He is currently senior insurance specialist for SEMA, the regional regulator and supervisor covering 14 countries in Central and West Africa. He is an influential member of the committee in charge of microinsurance development in the region. So we would now like to request Mr. Luke to make his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm also sorry for my lateness because I just landed and after a very long journey, and I'm something like 6-hour time difference. So I apologize if I look like I'm sleepy, but I will try to be as concise as my predecessor. So I would like to share the SEMA experience in dealing with climate and disaster risks. And I would like just to point out 2 or 3 points. The first will be our experience so far with the index insurance. I will also share with you some recent development in the region and share also my thought and the perspective of SEMA. Some of you might be familiar with SEMA, but it's always good to have in mind that SEMA is not a country, but it's a region covering 14 countries in Central and West Africa, the countries that you have with these flags. And according to German Watch, this region, the region we just saw, is a region with a kind of moderate climate risk index. So we can feel like we are better than Bangladesh in terms of risk index. But at the same time, also according to German Watch, it's the most vulnerable region in the world in terms of risk. Probably because the factors that influence our preparedness to the risk are maybe one of the lowest. But I will focus now on our sector in the insurance, what we have done, what we can do, and what we are going to do to have a better preparedness for this risk, even if the risk index is low. We will see that sometimes when you are not well prepared, you can be hit very hard. So these countries also, some of them are presented by the World Bank and the IMF, like some between the most poor country in the world. We have 2 or 3 with a very low GDP, and sometimes they face crises like famine and many other problems. I don't speak about terrorism because that is a global problem now. But even 2 days ago, we have faced an attack in Mali, which is one of our country. But the economy of the region is based on the agriculture. So more than 2/3 of the economy of these countries, all these countries, are based on agriculture. And with Cameroon and Côte d'Ivoire leading the economy of the region. So Cameroon, Côte d'Ivoire, for example, is the leading, one of the leading producers of cocoa in the world, and banana. So one idea was to identify the risk, the climate risk that could hurt this asset on agriculture. How could we protect the farmers and make sure that the economies could not be damaged because of a climate issue? So that's why we came to the end that index insurance could be a good solution to protect the farmers and to protect more globally our economies. And during the recent 10 years, we have carried out some pilot projects thanks to the World Bank support with the Global Index Insurance Facility. We have experienced a pilot project in Senegal with a government-based insurance company that is specialized in agriculture insurance, and there was our main field to test index insurance. So CNAS in Senegal was founded something like 10 years ago, especially to provide insurance product to the rural world and the agriculture world. And there we start few products, and the regulators support this pilot project. So we are in a kind of sandbox project, even for agriculture there. We were involved in this learning process with the insurer and the government. So the case of Senegal is that all other insurers are members of CNAS. So they take shares at the beginning. The government asks them to take shares to launch this specialized insurance company. The government also decided to subsidize the premiums. And there was a lot of meetings between the insurer, CNAS, and the Ministry of Agriculture, many other public authorities in charge of the protection of the low-income people and in charge of developing agricultural policy in the country. It's almost the similar project we had in Benin with AMAB, and most recently in Cameroon, we have AXA with a local insurer partner to launch also a great nationwide index insurance product. So those projects, because we are still in the pilot phase, demonstrate that actually index insurance is a powerful tool to mitigate climate risk for low-income people. Though we still have some problem at the nationwide level, and we receive in our countries the offer of African risk capacity, which is also an initiative in charge of protecting the countries. So most of our countries have subscribed an insurance plan, which appear like a reinsurance for the micro, but which is an insurance for the country. The idea here is to be more prepared, not to wait the catastrophe and indemnify the population who have been hurted. But the idea is to pay a premium, a kind of premium, to convert the indemnity in a premium that cover the whole country against an eventual catastrophe. So it's an early project. We are something like 4 to 5 years in this initiative, and so far, maybe it's too early to draw conclusion, but so far people seem to be satisfied. We have other aspects which are not specific to SEMA, and maybe most of you are familiar with these elements. We know that natural catastrophes and extreme weather events are a great concern. 80% of natural disaster from 2005 to 2015 are linked to climate. And climate change has been ranked like the first risk recently by many organizations in charge of watching the world risk. We also witness a high level of sea rise, and more recently we witnessed the the big fire in the Amazon forest, and with huge consequences. All these look like a fiction for some of us, or a beautiful literature for scientists, very far from our reality, especially from SEMA region. As we have said, we are not really familiar with climate catastrophes, apart of some countries, as I just said, with drought, which has been identified as one of the problem, but which became a kind of normal way of living, like winter in Western countries. So we look like this is not a real problem. But last week in Cameroon, which is one of the most stable countries in terms of climate, we faced a tragedy because of inundations. More than 50 persons were killed during their sleep. So the inundation in Bafoussam, which is a stable place in Cameroon, I said that Cameroon is one of the leading countries of SEMA. We had a landslide, and it's only 1 week ago, so we are still on the shock. I wanted to show these pictures, and I had a video. I will not show it now. But first of all, maybe to pay tribute to these people who left their life there, but also to show that we were not so prepared as we thought. We're not so prepared as we thought. The country and the region still on shock, and we are asking what we could have done. One of the lessons, and we are currently in SEMA, we have a kind of crisis committee discussing on what insurance could have done or could do in this kind of situation. So far we have focused on index insurance. We have focused on the risk or the consequence that climate could have on farmers, on agriculture. But there are people who lose their lives because of climate problems. And apparently the insurance world was not really prepared to help these populations. So far, the protection of this kind of catastrophes is mostly carried out by the Ministry of, I would say, civil protection in most of our countries. But we have started working with the national authorities. Remember that I told you that SEMA is 14 countries, so in each country you have a national insurance authority which report to SEMA, which is the regional supervisor and regulator. So we have started in each of these countries to put local committees for civil protections, including these catastrophes. And national authorities of insurance are part of these committees. So the idea will be to see how, like I said with the African risk capacity, how the indemnity that the government, like in Cameroon now, they are paying something like $1 billion US dollars to indemnify the population. How could this indemnity transform into a premium? So we are working to identify the risks. We go beyond drought now and see all climate risks that could hurt populations. We need to assess this risk and calculate the premiums that the government first, which is in charge of protecting this population, could pay, but also what the population themselves could pay. Because even in the index insurance, one of the questions that remain is how could we convert the pilot project to a sustainable model that could survive without government subsidies? That is a question, and we think that we need to achieve this situation, this level, to have very sustainable protection for our population against climate risk. So it's very recent, and now we are drafting a new strategy, a climate strategy at SEMA level. That strategy will be submitted by the end of this year. So the regulator, the supervisor need to have more involvement in the climate issues, climate risk issues. And one thing we are going to include in our strategies, consumer education is very important, because some people blame the population because they build houses in risky regions and those kind of things. We also want to include an approach to disclosure on financial risk from climate change, and also scenario analysis and stress testing on climate-related issues. Last but not the least, we want to implement internally in SEMA a green strategy. And I already agreed with the General Secretary of SEMA on some action that could be done starting in January. For example, planting trees in the cities, because SEMA is based in Gabon. So how could all the personnel, the staff from the authority be involved in this kind of activities? Because that could create or increase I would say, the sensibility to climate issues. And if the staff from the supervisor or the regulator are sensitized on these issues, probably they will be more effective in doing their job regarding climate risk. So thank you for your attention, and I'm waiting for some questions if there are.
Thank you, Mr. Luke, for the excellent presentation. I think it's going to rain outside, right? No, just joking, just to wake you up. Sorry, bad joke. Okay, thank you, Mr. Luke, for the wonderful presentation. I guess it gives a perspective on how you guys are addressing the climate change risks from a regional perspective. And we believe that's could be a very good example for all of us to learn more about how you are addressing those issues when there is a cross-country matters are involved. And we believe we would like to know more about on SEMA activities when it comes to initiating the local bodies of insurance as well as the governments to get engaged in some common goals. So wonderful presentation once again, and we'd like to open the floor for questions. Anyone? Oh, Augusto, yeah.
Thanks for that. We've just announced our participation, Willis Stars Watson, in something called the Global Asia Insurance Partnership, which is kind of a pan-Asian think tank with MAS, the Singaporean regulator, and NTU. And it's kind of, there is a policy conversation that perhaps might be similar to the SEMA policy discussions going forward. And I guess one question is around the regulation or the encouragement of the regulation and supervision of index-based insurance. And the question would be, what's been your experience in, obviously they're all 14 are independent entities acting with particularities to each his own country. And what has been your approach, what has worked, and what work needs to be done in future to see better implementations and more demand for index-based insurance in SEMA?
Thank you for the good question. And the question is broader than only, it's covered broader than the scope of the index insurance. You know, having 14 countries around the table and we have the unique insurance legislation in force in these countries, any change in regulation should be approved by the 14 Ministry of Finance of this country. So it's not so easy to make change. But when it comes to climate issues, especially for drought, because we have identified drought like one of the key risks, there was a kind of quick solidarity of all the countries. You know, you have, as I said, countries like Cameroon who thought that they were not really concerned by drought. But when there is a project on the table to cover, to protect one of the members of SEMA, and which member is one of the weakest member of the group, gain the adhesion was not so difficult to have. And as I said, we didn't jump directly to change regulation. We adopt parallel approach, test and learn approach. So that's also something I would recommend to many supervisors, because sometimes we are very, we rush to regulate, to put barriers, to sanction, but in this case, because of the sensitivity of the question, we suggested to the ministers of finance an approach of projects, which were very successful because during this learning process, we were able to adjust a lot of things, and you already highlighted some questions like issues on data. There are also other issues that we have addressed during the pilot phase, and after something like 5 years, we enacted the first regulations on index insurance. That is 3 years ago. That was also very easy to approve. That's what I can say. And now what we realized more recently is other countries that believed were not exposed to climate risk are also exposed. Yeah. Cameroon is the second market in the region, and last week they just faced a drama. And I think the project or the thinking we have started a few months ago will speed up now, because we don't want this thing to happen in other countries or in other regions, in other region in the country, So that's what I can say to answer your question.
Some of these islands only have 30,000 people, and the Caribbean is the most tourist-dependent economy region in the world. But some of the islands have some agriculture and some farming. And when in the situation we had with Grenada, when the hurricane hit there, I believe it was Ivan when it hit, it not only wiped out the tourist industry, it wiped out the only cash crop that the country had, which was nutmeg. And nutmeg is a cash crop, and the reason it wiped it out and caused devastation to the farmers is because it takes 8 years for a nutmeg tree to grow from the ground, from a seedling, till it matures, till you can pick the crop and sell it. So in the meantime, the farmers were, basically starving. And so my question is, anybody have an answer to this? How do you deal with insurance? What kind of insurance are available in a situation like that, where the trees take about 8 to 10 years to mature? Thank you.
No, he's okay. They're the practitioners in our country. They're working on that. How many companies now in our country?
Frankly speaking, weather index is done by only us, Green Delta.
Green Delta, but the number of the companies, you tell me.
Number of the companies of
yes,
what?
of the insurance companies working in the country.
There are 46 non-life insurance.
Focus or the, whatever he mentioned.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, please.
I guess one could look at it at a couple of ways. One might be that the insurance industry tries to participate in all disaster risk financing as maybe a subset of, you've got your aid, you've got your contingent loans, you've got your budget reallocations, and one tries to be helpful in both the severity type covers to get people back on their feet, as well as the frequency type covers, I think, which there was some discussion about this on the last panel. And the industry is quite familiar with either. You may recall that, for example, life companies create a lot of savings products with insurance elements to them. So I think there's a lot to contribute to that. Another frame that one might approach something like this is that the fact of insurance tends to be helpful in terms of encouraging good risk management behavior. And so it's possible that over the longer term, with a good combination of sources of disaster risk funding, insurance included, perhaps some resilient farming practices might be encouraged, such that maybe not the entire crop is nutmeg, and maybe there are some shorter cycles that one can participate in. And there's, of course, knock-on effects. So if insurers and governments and other actors in society are collaborative in helping communities become more robust, maybe even credit might be made more available. Well, we're funding some stock of planting for this long cycle stocks, but maybe there are also other occupations and livelihoods that are interim that can be encouraged. So it's a whole of society conversation, I think, which insurers and insurance type analysts can help inform in terms of whole of society decision making about climate resilience.
Yes, absolutely. We have some questions from the audience here.
An actuary from Canada. What you're just talking about, what I was going to address, how is this program integrated? Like in Bangladesh, I think you've made, I congratulate you on the progress you made in reducing the mortality from disasters. But how in your country and in the SEMA countries, how do you integrate this? Because I think insurance is one small piece of the whole thing, and index insurance is another small piece. How do we make that piece work better? Is it really integrated in government policies in Bangladesh that you want to reach inclusive insurance? Do you have the disaster risk management working with the insurance industry and the MFIs to reach people? Is it really working integrated approach? And are you covering the resilience issues that you have to do? I don't think it's going to work unless you have everybody working together. So,
thank you very much. Actually, if you see, for 5 years before, it was not really mentioned. It's properly or very elaborately how can we cover the insurance. He mentioned the holistic approach, but if you see the edited version of all this document, now government is very sincere and including already been included. There are some in some documents, but there are some documents need to be revisited and need to be edited. And I am with you that this is the time to revisit all the documents, all the policies, and it is the time to include the insurance issue in the document. I think through this kind of meeting, seminar, international conference, and the arts from the private sector, but it is the time to discuss all this issue and to properly revisit all the document and to include all these things.
Take this question as a direction or recommendation to what to do. So far, as I said, we are just coming out from the pilot phases, and we could say like there is a kind of natural integration of the index insurance in the social security systems, but we actually need to make sure that the integration is really harmonious and that it really fill a gap that miss. And we believe that there are a lot of gaps in the security, the social security systems in our countries. So the place of index insurance, as many other risks that are not yet well covered, still need to find. We have had a discussion with the industry recently, and I believe that there are a lot of mandatory insurance that need to be included in the regulations, in the legislation, to ensure a proper protection of the populations. So we are still discussing, because we believe that mandatory insurance is sometimes important, but what we already have in terms of mandatory insurance seems not to be satisfactory. So the global of the whole system is in, I say in French, in chantier. It's an ongoing project, you know, and I take your question as a strong recommendation to keep in mind that all what we are doing should be part of a global system.
I can see one more hand was there from the audience. Anyone? Yeah.
We should not underestimate the influence of the insurance industry and actually the influence of the regulators to impose risk management standards. Yeah, the gentleman from Bangladesh mentioned the building code, but the same goes for large-scale commercial agriculture, thinking about trees, agroforestry, how you, even over a lifetime or investment lifetime of, let's say, 8 to 10 years of a tree plantation, how you make insurance coverage dependent on irrigation, on other kinds of risk management. And I think that's, besides enabling good indices and good risk transfer, also enabling preventive coverage or preventive measures against risk. I think that's a great role and opportunity for the regulatory authorities.
I don't want to mention the relief from Sapud, whatever I have mentioned, that 4 districts, the whole of the society, whole of the community, we fed for 1 year. This is not possible for the government. So this is the time to think about that, from Sapud to the insurance system. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Carl, you would like to add something?
Well, if I would like to conclude here on my points, I basically would subscribe to the view that there should be greater effort by companies with respect to putting contingency plans in place. I think what has to happen here is that the contingency plans that we are seeing needs to be improved. They need to deal with the macro, the meso, and the micro factors, and they need to deal with this in a way where, as we all know, you do the planning, you have the disaster, you pay out, which is really the liquidity, and then you have the recovery. And the recovery is really where you learn, where the lessons are learned, and that's where you build in better building codes, for example, and so you have the recovery in there. But I think the more important thing about the contingency plans is you have to figure out what has worked, and you need to institutionalize that within the jurisdiction. You don't want to lose that. And so you have to treat the contingency plans as an iterative exercise. And that, to me, is the way we need to approach this, because this is not going to go away. Thank you.
Thank you. Augusto?
Partly I want to comment on the thought about supervisors and governments encouraging certain types of behavior that maybe we haven't contemplated yet. For example, I was with the WWF trying to figure out the intersection between the InsuResilience 500 million vulnerable and certain conservation projects that they're doing. And it would be a great thing if policy environments were supportive of those types of conversations. So we're talking about, I guess, at a basic level, disaster risk, resilience, But I'm glad for some of these comments because it's more than that, and it's something that I appreciate that the A2I or the Microinsurance Network create opportunities for people to get together, to convene people from different points of view so that we can explore sort of the gamut of resilience efforts within insurance or disaster risk finance.
Absolutely. Thank you. Nook?
Yes, my final words have two directions. The first, I would like to challenge the industry because even we define index insurance like a private, most of the time a private initiative, we observe that in many cases there is a lack of proposition coming from the industry to cover people from climate risk. So I would like to challenge them to be more involved, not only like in a social activity or corporate social responsibility activity, but also to identify opportunities beyond the risk. Like Society of Actuaries used to say, risk is opportunity. The second word will be toward regulators. So I would like to seize this, the opportunity of this tribune to invite, in my capacity of chair of IAIS Financial Inclusion Group, Working Group, to our meeting. So we can meet tomorrow morning. Anna is going to give us some detail on that. And this is a question that really interests us as partners of public, working for the public interest. So we have been discussing on mobile or technology issues, but now I think climate issues really concern us. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. To wrap it up of the session on the role of insurance supervisors and policymakers in closing the gap, the broader takeaway we believe from this session is there is a suggestion and recommendation came on the greater efforts are needed on a regional approach and more integrated cooperations are needed. And insurance needs to be an integral part of a national strategy while addressing the climate change risks. This could be in many forms, as one of the panelists has mentioned. This could be in the form of PPP. This could be in the form of drawing up a national catastrophe pool and so many things. Before ending the note, I had a question from the audience. What I meant by Dhaka is sinking, it's the source came from World Economic Forum report, probably from 2018. You can check it out. It means because of the sea level rising, definitely. Apart from that, also for the contributes to the unplanned urbanization and to some extent the deforestation. Dhaka is one of the cities that is sinking. Of course, not to the extent of Jakarta. So thank God. So we believe we are going to stay here for a few hundred years more. But then again, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being a great audience. Please do enjoy Dhaka city. We have one of the biggest mall in 200 yards from here, and we have a lovely jogging or walking place 500 years from this hotel. So feel free, enjoy Dhaka city, and hope to catch you soon in the next events. Thank you so much.
A big thanks to our panelists and to Said for your moderation. I think this was a very fruitful discussion. And I am happy to report that we are back on time now. So please enjoy a 1.5 hour coffee break and, not coffee break, I'm sorry, lunch break, of course. Lunch is served downstairs in ballroom 2. And we will continue at 2 p.m. with our workshop, which will give you all a chance to engage even more. So thanks very much and enjoy your lunch. See you back at 2.